challenge what you believe about yourself and realize like, you know what, I'm actually not as bad as I used to think. I'm actually a really good guy. I'm actually like really, and it's like when you have those positive statements about yourself, you say that to yourself or other people say it to you, it's actually going to change the way that you think. And when you change the way that you think, it's going to change your behavior. You're not in this all alone. At the end of the day, it's a matter of your true self and then fighting against that narrative that you've taught yourself to believe in, right? It's a narrative. That's all it is.
All right. Hey, brothers. I got here Gerardo. He's willing to share his wins and overall progress of his reboot journey so far. So, brother, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Yeah, let's start with that. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So my name is Gerardo Leon. As of now, I'm 24 years old, and the field that I work in is data analytics. And basically, I started this program when I was like, I want to say like 23, I believe. And so up to this point, I was, struggling with this compulsive behavior ever since I was 12 years old. I had a lot of issues with it and just kind of like on and off. And so I wanted to commit to this reboot because for one thing, I do want to get married. That is one of my goals. I want
Mhm.
to advance in my career. And for me, that really matters a lot. And I just want to be a better person socially, be more outgoing, be able to make friends, not be nervous and anxious all the time. I want to be able to like approach people like naturally and be able to be a likable person, not be irritable, have better emotional intelligence, these kinds of things. And so that was kind of what I was expecting through this reboot. And so far, I feel like there's some good results with it. And yeah, that's more or less about myself.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. And so, I was about to ask you too. So, what was going on before you started implementing the system? What was areas in your life that you were struggling with? You kind of alluded to it, right? But if you want to be more specific, what was that one thing? Is like, damn. Besides, obviously, their compulsive behavior, what was going on feelings wise as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess if there's two ways to kind of break it down, one way is just like from my career perspective. And
Mm.
so at that time I was working a contract job and my job ended. It was going to end on July 31st and I was still looking for work at that time and I still couldn't find a job. And so all that stress really took a toll on me because I wanted to find a job, before ending that contract. And then what happened was that sometime around, I want to say March or April, and even later, I believe it was like around, I want to say like August, September-ish. There were like I had like a relationship with one girl and it really ended really badly and it really took a toll on me and it kind of made me fall back into, basically the PMO again, right? And because it was like a huge, like it was just sad and I just didn't know how to control that or cope with it or whatever. And then I had another situation where I was talking to this girl, but it was more like a situationship.
Hmm.
And basically that kind of really made me upset because of the fact that, it's like I'm talking to this girl, I'd like to meet her in person, but it's kind of like I have not told her about my, about my past, let's say, right? And I never brought that up to her. And so it just kind of weighed on me a lot. And I ended up just breaking up with her for other reasons, but for me, it just felt so bad to like, to talk to a girl or have a situationship or relationship and not be open about these kinds of things because I feel like they have the right to know about it. And so just that kind of, stress on my head, like for me, like I kind of needed something to be able to maneuver through this, right? I wanted to find a goal to like eventually end it and at the same time be able to kind of control these emotions that I feel because I feel like it kind of just throws me back into, going into like PMO and that kind of stuff.
Okay. No, brother, thank you for sharing those details. So it seems like there was a lot of you wanted to live more from a place of integrity, right? And just working through these things while being honest with the women you want to be involved with romantically, which is, hey, I have nothing wrong. I don't see nothing wrong with that. That's actually pretty good value to have, right? Just to be honest and not carry that with you, or at least working on it, right, as you navigate through those relationships. And all right, brother. So coming into this program, what was so impactful for you that you're like, whoa, I didn't see this tool or this concept be so effective for me? What was that win for you?
Yeah, so I would say probably the most important win was just kind of getting to the habit of like going to Dr. Jessica Eastman's like Tuesday calls. Like every Tuesday, I've been going to those regularly. I would say that's my favorite call because I feel like she talks a lot about emotional intelligence, talks a lot about trauma, talks about like, name, validate, feel, and these kinds of things. And I feel like just consistently going to those kinds of meetings at least once a week. I mean, I do try to go to the Tuesday and the Friday one for the most part. And I just feel like number one, I get to see all these people that are struggling with the same thing. And it's kind of an encouraging thing because it's like we don't have it all figured out. We're all kind of in the same boat. And I'm constantly like learning new things. And sometimes I might forget the thing that I learned. And then like she'll talk about it later, like a couple weeks from today or something like that. And so it's kind of like reinforcing the concepts that I'm learning about and just kind of helping me like make better decisions, be more self-aware, and that kind of stuff. And I feel like she kind of hits on these different things very well. And so for me, that's a huge win because, just having someone sit down and teach those things to you, just better emotional intelligence, just because at the end of the day, I can't learn these things by myself. That's why I need the program, right? And so for me, that's probably been the most effective thing for me. Obviously, the feelings exercise, waking up consistently every day, and that kind of thing. Like for me, that's like for me, just having that structure has
Yeah.
been very important for me. So
That's good, man. Yeah, structure is very important, specifically for dealing from a sexual compulsive behavior. And yeah, I agree. Like Dr. Eastman calls are great, man. They're you learn about emotions and also why we act a certain way because of trauma or whatever that thing is we went through in our own lives. And you're right. Sometimes, like looking at or listening to other brothers' perspectives and their own experience, what's going on in their life, you kind of like see like, oh, sometimes acting like a big baby here, like making my problem this big thing. In reality, there's a solution to it. And these other brothers, hey, not to compare, right? But sometimes other their experiences are just as like, whoa, man. And he's dealing it with the same strategies or tools that I'm being offered.
mm,
So it kind of gives you hope, like, oh, it's not really as bad as I think it is, right? It's just our mind tends to make it more than what it is. And it's really just dealing with the emotions. And self awareness is key. I do agree. And having that self awareness, how has that improved your life?
I would definitely say self-awareness has helped with, and it kind of sounds silly to bring it up, but one thing I really learned from this program is the idea that when we have an emotion, right, just out of nowhere, emotions come up, and like you have to notice a physical, like bodily response. Like you have to find it where in your body that it is. And so
Mhm.
in general, like before I ever joined this program, like I would feel emotions, but I would never know what exactly I was feeling, you know?
Mm.
And because of that, it's like if you don't know what you're feeling, then how can you regulate what you're doing? How can you control yourself if you don't even know what's going on? You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like these two questions for me matter a lot when I kind of think about this. I always ask myself like what am I feeling right now? Right? Because forget about the future, forget about the past. Like it's like that book, right? The Power of Now, right? Like
Or
what am
no.
I feeling right now in the moment? And just asking that question, finding where in my body it is and that kind of thing. And just kind of learning like, okay, like this is what fear feels like. This is what anger feels like, and et cetera, right? And then asking
Yeah.
like what made me feel this way, right? Like why am I afraid? Like what, is it because of this person? Is it because of the situation? Is it because of something else? And just kind of knowing, more or less predicting my behavior, predicting when I'll feel an emotion. And the self-awareness helps a lot because then it helps me be aware of other people, right?
Yeah.
And so like for example, like at this point I've gotten into a habit of like before I say something, I always make a prediction about how this person will react if I did say that. And then I decide, should I say it or should I not say it? And then I realize, I'm not going to say that. It's probably a bad idea, probably not the right context, the right setting, the right time, and I think about that. But at the end of the day, like in order to even do that, you already need to have the self-awareness. You know what I mean? And so it's just kind
Yeah.
of like, it kind of builds up from there. And now it's like awareness of self, awareness of context, awareness of other people. It's like it all like self-awareness is like the foundation for all that. And so that's been my experience. So
That's pretty good, man. I tend to say just things that are in my mind, and that's how I use my humor. It's just because I just like, oh, let me just say that, and I never really pause to think, and that's because I that place for me is trust, right? And you're learning to trust yourself. I guess that's what you're building too, right? And the overthinking comes from getting someone's approval or saying the right thing, right? Whatever that is. But I like the how you put it that is sometimes, hey, we could just be so logical that sometimes our words are like we think about it later. Oh yeah, I did come off like a dick, but you
yeah.
won't know that because you're like, I just wow, but I just said the truth. Sometimes you don't have to say the truth there. You can say a variation of it, and then when that person's in a better state emotionally or mentally, you could say it right or wait a day. So that kind of perspective or awareness is really huge, man. So that takes a lot of effort, which I could tell you've been practicing that a lot. And okay, brother. So having that awareness and those tools, when it comes to your compulsive behavior now, how has it like, how are you dealing with urges? How do you see urges now as you deal with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, like the way I deal with urges primarily is just making sure that I have the right boundaries in place that are meant to kind of, in a sense, prevent it from happening. But I feel like over time, I feel like because at the beginning it was kind of like I didn't have that many urges at all, or if I did have an urge, it wouldn't really affect anything. But I noticed that later into the program, I started slipping a couple times. I wasn't as strict with my boundaries and that kind of thing. And I think the main reason why was because I had my phone in my bedroom, and like that was like the number one reason why it was happening, right? Because but the thing is that the way I deal with urges and more generally the way I deal with slips is I realize like all of this is data to go off
Mhm.
on, right? I'm saying like as a data analyst, right? Which is kind of
Yeah.
so the thing is that hey, when do these slip happen? They happen early in the morning or late at night, right? I know that for a fact. Like that's how it's always been. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
I already know that those are situations where I'm more vulnerable. So I gotta have the alarm clock. I gotta get the phone out of my bed or out of my bedroom, I should say, and just kind of being more aware that like it's kind of like you already know what's gonna happen, kind of thing. And it's like you feel your brain kind of rewiring. You don't feel the urges as often, right? Because at the end of the day, every once in a while we're going to slip. That's just how it is, right? Because we're constantly rebooting. But for me, just doing the dialoguing, just kind of like writing down like what I feel and just kind of thinking about like just kind of being aware of like that the urge is happening and then just knowing like, hey, look, I can dialogue with myself. I can do a feelings exercise. I can do these things to kind of just ask myself like why am I having this urge? Like what emotion is underneath this, and just asking those questions, like questioning your reality in a sense, right? And
Yeah.
just kind of challenging that narrative that the mind was telling you up to this point, and now it's like, no, 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 like this doesn't sound right, right? This is my true self, right? Not my addict self or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Bro, sounds like you did a lot of inner work, man. And I could tell all these what's it called, observations, even about yourself is kind of cool to see because that's how I know you're kind of rewiring and not focusing too much on like, oh, the videos or this is the main thing. As you know, it's not, right? There's actually practical things that are useful, like don't bring your phone to your bed, like that, or bathroom, wherever you want to act out or you commit that ritual. And just stopping it is it's hard at first, right? I remember the first time I did that, I was like, man, you know what? Like, what am I doing? And that moment, that split second of just I tossed my phone. I remember tossing my phone, like, what am I doing? That's where I knew, like, oh, it is a pattern. It is like this is what I would do because I don't like being too much in my own thoughts or emotions. And then that's where I had to deal with my or have a better relationship with how I feel and not react, right? Because if anything, when you react, that's when you slip is a reaction, right? You reacted to whatever thing happened to you. So no, brother, I really appreciate that. And that's a game changer. And it's funny that if that's the one thing, brothers who are listening, if you could fix that problem, you'll have an easier time. I know it sucks because our brains are so used to so high stimuli, and oh, the bedroom, right? I'm bored. I don't want to sleep. We prolong that sleep for what? Like it's learning to reset that dopamine, right? Like you're not supposed to have that much intense rush at night. Like it's we're just so used to it because it's the norm, right? Over a decade now, I would say. So having that boundary is very important, especially early on. So, brother, I really appreciate you sharing that part of your reboot. And so, how is I know we talked a little bit earlier about your relationship with your APs. How is the accountability partners helping you? That part of the system.
yeah, I would say the main reason why they're helpful would be it's kind of keeping you accountable in the sense of you're constantly thinking about, oh man, next Tuesday or next Thursday, I have to come up with a good win that's worth talking about, kind of thing. And so obviously, as of now, obviously I've been applying for jobs. And so you could say that's a win in a sense. You could say doing a feelings exercise is a win, but
Mhm.
you kind of graduate to the point where now it's like you want to do like more like a milestone or something like more impressive or more interesting. And so I can think of in the past, I've said things like, hey, I finished the book, The Power of Now, right? Or I finished the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself and that kind of stuff. And like just, finishing books, things that are a little bit more interesting. Like I just love telling that to my APs because it's a marker of progress. Like I'm actually doing these kinds of things. And
Yep.
kind of in a similar way, when you go to and this is why I like Dr. Eastman's calls, right? I'm kind of doing the same thing where it's like, hey, do you have any, like a positive focus, some sort of marker of progress? I'm like, yeah, I went on a date, right?
Yeah.
Just, that kind of stuff, just it's one thing to do the win, and then it's another thing to tell someone about it because it's kind of like encouraging and it's like the other person can be like, oh wow, that's great, good job, and it's like we're kind of encouraging each other, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I need that encouragement from someone else, like kind of we're sharing our energy a little bit. And so that way I'm motivated to like keep going and do more wins and more wins and just, it's just meant to be more of like a motivation. That's the way I take it.
Yeah, of course. That's very, especially if you're a type of guy that you don't really appreciate the little things, like reading the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, right? I guarantee you, like whoever's watching, and it's in the program. You probably haven't read it, but if you read Breaking the Cycle and other books, but for some reason that book, some people are adverse to it. But hey, at their own time, right? But it's that is a win, right? You not that you force yourself to read it, but you know this book was gonna help is gonna help you in some shape or form. And to us that are just that like to read already, it's like it's not a big deal, right? You're like, oh, I just read a book. But no, you actually read a book that addresses how you're talking about yourself in a negative way and how it impacts your body, your emotional state, and how you react as well. So when you kind of share that with a accountability partner, they can like, hey, bro, great job, right? And in the back of your head, great job. Like it kind of reveals a part of yourself that why am I only looking forward to like that end goal versus these micro wins that are just as important, right? So that perspective, it kind of trains your nervous system to see what's going right versus like, oh, I'm not rebooted yet, right? Yeah, that is the main goal, but these little steps that you're taking are gonna get you there. So why not celebrate these quote unquote small wins, right? It's kind of subjective. Like in the grand scheme, like a small or big one is irrelevant. It's really what you make it to be. So that's a good thing, man. So, brother, not to take more of your time, I do appreciate you kind of sharing the wins so far. And what would you give encouragement to a brother that's watching this in the group and they're like, "Hey, I tend to feel this state of apathy. Like, I don't know, for some reason, I just don't. I know I should be doing this thing or reading this book." Well, how would you encourage that, brother?
At the end of the day, I feel like, probably where the apathy is coming from is the idea of I have to do like a million different things. I have to do this exercise and this program and go to all these Zoom calls and all this stuff. And it's like, it can be a little bit draining, almost like demotivating. And I would just say like just start with something small, you know what I mean? You know, like you just have to like build it up, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, maybe do a feelings exercise, like every day. Just be consistent with that, right? Just wake up, make sure you wake up in the morning every day, right? Like think about how, like you were saying, the micro wins to say, look, this is technically a win. It may seem kind of insignificant, doesn't really matter. I mean, you literally do every day, so it's like a routine. But at the end of the day, like as long as you understand that these are all wins technically, right? And then in addition to that, you get an interview or you talk to a girl or whatever, right? All of that is wins. All of it matters, right? All of it's kind of getting you to what your reboot definition is. And so, what you have to do to get that motivation is realize that you need to realize that these wins are real things. Like these are actually things that matter and they will affect because they kind of build up, kind of like when you pile it up. And, if you're looking for encouragement to keep going, I mean, you gotta have your APs, man. They gotta encourage you. They gotta, put your feet to the fire and be like, hey, look, it's been 2 weeks and you haven't done anything that impressive, or you haven't really finished a book, or you're not reading a book. It's like they're gonna push you, right? And you kind of need that accountability, right? And for me, it's like, like for me personally, like I would say the main thing that would discourage myself, like maybe my past self, let's say, is like, oh yeah, I can't do this because I'm ugly, or I'm not a good person, or I do this or whatever. And it's like that negative self-talk. It's like, no, 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 like you have to challenge that, right? Challenge the narrative, right? Challenge what you believe about yourself and realize like, you know what? I'm actually not as bad as I used to think. I'm actually a really good guy. I'm actually like really, and it's like when you have those positive statements about yourself, you say that to yourself or other people say it to you, it's actually going to change the way that you think. And when you change the way that you think, it's going to change your behavior, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, you're not in this all alone. At the end of the day, it's a matter of your true self and then fighting against that narrative that you've taught yourself to believe in, right? It's a narrative. That's all it is. And you just got to just say, I don't believe that. I believe I'm better than that. I believe I'm this. I believe I'm that. I'm not, a weirdo or whatever. You know what I mean?
Unless some creep. Yeah, I get you. Yeah, yeah. So, brothers, hey, take these words how you will, and like this brother said, just do that one thing that you know you should be doing, and we know that thing, right? But you have to sacrifice something, so do it. And Gerardo, thank you, brother. I appreciate you sharing and taking the time to share your wins here today. All right, brothers, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.